Okay, so this is the video answer key for 8.2, 8.8, 8.7, and 8.5 review worksheet. Again, you do not need to watch all of this video. Just fast forward to the problems that you need help with and watch those problems only. All right, so we're going to begin on number 1. So on number 1, hopefully you picked up that this was a difference of squares, right? So DOS, difference of squares. Keeping in mind that I can square root or break down that m squared. I've got a negative sign right there, and I can square root the 1. So when we break it down, the m squared goes to m, and then you have a plus 1, minus 1. All right, number 2. Number 2 is review of 4-term grouping. So on this guy, you want to go ahead and group, break it up, make sure you keep that negative with that negative 3p. All right, so in my first grouping, I can pull out a p squared, and I'm going to have a 3p and a minus 2 left over. On the second grouping, I'm going to go ahead and pull a negative 1 out so that my signs will flip. And when my signs flip, now the insides match. So I'm going to rewrite the outside, p squared minus 1, and then the 3p minus 2, writing down your inside. Now, in this case, if you got to here, you're doing pretty good. But this is also, right here, difference of squares right there. You can square root and you have a negative in there. So you needed to go ahead and then break that down to a p minus 1, a p plus 1, and then a 3p minus 2. All right, moving to number 3. Okay, so number 3, we have a equals 1 or a 1 out front, which means we're just looking for factors of this guy that add to this guy, right? Keeping in mind your signs. So since you have a negative here, you need to be thinking about that your signs would be a positive and a negative, okay? So now you're looking just for a list of 18. 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6, okay? And then when you think, oh, well, maybe I got one that works here. Well, how do we get a negative 3 there? The only way to get a negative 3 is to make that 6 negative. So we're getting b minus 6 and b plus 3. Again, that b squared is just breaking down to both parts. Okay, number 4. So on number 4, first off, there's definitely GCF here, so you can see that they pull out a 9 and an x when they do that. So basically just keep in mind that that just means you're technically dividing all these parts by 9x. And so you end up with 5. 45 divided by 9 is 5. You pulled out 1x, you have 2 left. Then you go to the next one here, and 81 divided by 9 is 9. You pull out 1x, you have 1 left. 27 divided by 9 is 3, and the x's cancel, so there's no x's left. Now, this is a quadratic, so we have to think about, can we go farther? Keeping in mind, I have not taught you how to do a quadratic with a number out front yet, so as of right now, you're going to be done. We're actually going to learn about this in the next lesson. All right, number 5, again, we're looking at another difference of squares, because I can square root, I've got a negative in the middle, and I can square root. So again, I'm going to break this down. The square root of 9 is 3, x squared breaks to x and x. I got a plus or minus in the middle, and then the square root of 4 is 2 and 2. Okay, on number 6, the only thing I can do here is pull out a GCF. So you can see here that they pull out a 4n, and when they pull out a 4n, they've got an n. If you want to put to the first power, that's fine, but they've got n to the first plus 1. There's nothing you can do when you've got n to the first, so you are done. All you can do is pull GCF there. All right, so on number 7, first thing you got to figure out is, did you pull a GCF? Remember, this is one thing you guys will forget to continually do. So let's go ahead and pull out a 5. Okay, and so I'm going to take 140. I divide by 5. I get 28 k to the third. I'm going to take the 20 and divide it by 5 and get 4 k squared. Now I'm going to take the 105 and divide it by 5 and get minus 21k. And then I'm going to take the 15, divide it by 5, and get a minus 3. Okay, now we're going to go into your 4-term grouping because we do have 4 parts here. So in the first part here, I can pull a 4 and 2 k's out of each part. So I'm going to have a 7k plus 1 left. On the second one here, I can pull out a negative 3, and it's going to be 7k plus 1. Okay, again, that 5 is technically out front. Okay, so now I rewrite it. 5 stays out front. 4k squared minus 3 combines together. And then you rewrite the 7k plus 1. Okay, number 8. Okay, so again, on number 8, we have got a 1 out here in front, which is a good thing, okay? But we do have a quadratic, right, exponent of 2, trinomial. So I'm looking for, again, factors of negative 30 that add to 7, okay? Again, if you don't come up with something quickly, start your list and keep it in order. So 1 times 30. Oh, and let's backtrack for a second. Also keep in mind that you need different signs here. The only way to get a negative 30 is to have a positive negative there. All right, so continue with my list. 2 times 15. No, that didn't quite work. 3 times 10. Well, yeah, this might work, okay? So if I've got 7 positives, that means I need my 10 to stay positive, or I need more positives, and then my negative will go on that 3. So now just be careful when you break this down. Make sure the a squared gets broken down, but also on that backside, make sure you're putting those b's on the backside. A lot of us will forget to put the b's on the backside. And then like we just kind of found here, you got a negative 3 and a positive 10. Always keep in mind you can FOIL these out just to double check your answer. All right. So this one again, quadratic with a 1 out front. Okay. So again, I'm just looking for factors of 10 that add to 11. All right. Well, start your list. So I start with 1 times 10 and boom, got it right off the bat here. Since it's all positives, we know it's got to be a positive positive. So the v squared just broke down to v and v, and then you've got a plus 1 plus 10. All right, on number 10, did you pull a GCF? Okay, so the first thing you should have done is pulled out a 5 and got 9k squared minus 16. Now, once you do that, this is right here. Oh, that guy's not big enough. I'll have to make him bigger, won't I? Okay, but this right here is a difference of squares. Okay, so you have to go ahead and square root this guy and square root this guy. So the 5 stays up front. The 9k squared, the square root of 9 is 3. K squared breaks to k and k. We have a plus and a minus, and then the square root of 16 is 4 and 4. Okay. All right, moving to the next page here, number 11. Okay, so number 11 is another difference of squares. So when you're looking at this, you can square root, you have minus in the middle, and you can square root. So the square root of 4 is 2, and the u squared breaks down to u and u. You've got your plus, your minus, and then the square root of 25 is 5, but keep in mind you've got to have those v's tacked on the back side since it's on the back side up here. Okay. All right, number 12. Again, this is a quadratic with a 1 out front. Okay, so I'm just basically making a list of this that adds to this, right? So I'm looking like 1 times 45. 2 doesn't go. 3 times 15. Nope, that's no good. That's not going to get me a 4. And let's backtrack even for a second. I should have talked about signs, right? To get a negative, we got to take a positive times a negative to get to that negative 4 in the middle, okay? But the only way to get a negative 45 is take a positive times a negative, okay? All right, and then 4 doesn't go. 5. 5 times 9. Well, we probably got a winner there. Okay, so now if I'm thinking about 4 negatives, that means my big number should have more negatives on it. That's the only way to have 4 negatives left over. And then 5 positives. Okay, again, if you're unsure of your signs, please FOIL it out and make sure you're getting back to that negative 4 that we're looking for. Okay, number 13. 4-term grouping. There is no GCF, so we go, whoops. We're going to go straight to grouping. So on the first grouping there, I'm going to pull out an x squared. And when I do that, I've got an x plus 8. On the second grouping there, I'm going to pull out a 5 and get x plus 8. So x squared plus 5 and x plus 8 are my factors. Okay, number 14. All right, so on 14, and this one was probably tricky, you had to pull a GCF first. A lot of you probably would not have picked up that you could have pulled a 3 out of them, but you can. So you've got an x squared minus 16xy, and then we've got a plus 63y squared. Okay, so pulling that GCF out front was huge right away. Okay, all right, so now again we have a quadratic with a 1 out front, which is what we need. Okay, you got to have a 1 out front for right now. Okay, so now you're looking for factors of this guy that adds to this guy. All right, well, you can see up here that they came up with -9 and -7. Okay, keeping in mind your signs. If it's a positive, it's either going to be a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative. Well, it has to be a negative negative to get that negative right there. So you keep your 3 out front. You break that x squared to x and x. All right, and then if we're thinking about 9 times 7, since we kind of know the answer here, 9 times 7, well, the only way for this to get a -16 is to make them both negative, and that's okay because that works right here with my double negative. So I have a -9, a -7. Now don't forget those y's on the back side. You have a y on the back side here. It needs to show up on the back side there. All right, number 15, again, is another one where we need to pull a GCF. Okay, again, for right now, you don't know how to solve when you've got a number out in front of a quadratic. Not yet, okay? So we're going to pull a 3 out, and you're going to get p squared plus 1p minus, I think it's 42. Minus 42, okay? So again, you start your list. Let's talk about signs first. So on your signs, remember we got to have a positive negative. That's the only way to get a -42. Now you can start your list here and you can kind of run down through it and keep working. And eventually we're going to hit 6 times 7. And so when I look at 6 times 7, the only way to get a +1 in the middle is to have more positives. So the 7 stays positive, the 6 is negative. And again, if you're not sure, you can always check it. So 3, p squared breaks to p and p. And then you have a -6 and a +7. Okay, number 16. So on this guy, when we're looking at it, okay, you can pull a 10 out, which is, you can see, that's what they've done here. They've just pulled a GCF of 10 out. Now, you cannot go any farther because this is not a quadratic. That's a degree of 5 or a 5th degree polynomial. That's not going to work, okay? And also the other problem is you don't know how to solve something with a number out front yet. So pulling a GCF here was the only thing you could do currently. Okay, number 7. All right, so quadratic again with a 1 out front. So again, you're making a list. So like 1 times 50, 2 times 25, and then 5 times 5. So then we find something that finally works there. Again, think about your signs. You got to have a positive negative to get a negative right there. Okay, so you can see they break down that a squared to a and a. They have found that 5 and 10 are going to be your options here. And since I have 5 positives, I need more positives, and that makes the 5 negative. So you can see I have a -5 and a +10, and then did you break down those b squareds on the back side? Okay, number 18. Okay, we've got a 1 out front again. We've got a quadratic right here. Okay, so that means I'm looking for factors of this guy that add up to this guy. And since they're all positives, we get all positives down here. So that's kind of nice. So now we can see that if I look at 9 times 8, 9 times 8, 72. And when I add it, that gets me 17. And that's how they came up with that answer. Okay, all right, 19. Now this one's actually out of your notes from earlier, sometime last week there. Pull a GCF. So 7 should come out right away. So let's pull 7. And we're going to get x to the 3rd, 3x squared minus 1x minus 3. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and group. So I'm going to put my x's, or sorry, my first 2 together and my second 2 together. Now in this first blue grouping, I can pull out an x squared, and I have x plus 3 left when I do that. In the second grouping, I can pull a -1 and get x plus 3. So now you rewrite it, x squared minus 1 and x plus 3. Drop in your 7. Okay, now if you got to there, you're doing an awesome job. The problem is you probably did not pick up that this guy right here was a difference of squares. Okay, so then you had to keep going one more step here, and you had to keep the 7 up front, but you had to break this guy down. So x squared goes to x and x because you can square root it. It's got a minus and you can square root. So remember, plus or minus because it's a difference of squares. Square root of 1 is 1. And then that x plus 3 is just going to drop in. Okay. All right. And the last one, number 20. So now, again, this is another one where we've got an area of a rectangle. Okay. They've given you here it is all multiplied out. And then they tell you the length is f plus 7. So your job is to find the width. Well, what's happened here is they've already given you one of the factors. They're telling you that one factor is f plus 7. Your job's to figure out what should this other guy be. Well, we know f squared is going to break down to f and f, so we already know it's an f. So let's look at this guy right there. So if that's negative 77, right, and you already know one of your factors is 7, well, 7 times what is going to get you negative 77? Well, negative 11. So f minus 11, right here, this would be your width. Okay, so this is what we're looking for. Okay, all right, that concludes the video for this review worksheet.